Steelers fans, that was a rough one Sunday night. The Steelers lose 16-10. Kenny Pickett throws 3 interceptions, 2 in the fourth quarter in costly situations. But I'm going to tell y'all why you shouldn't be giving up on him if you're feeling real rough about it on Monday morning. We'll talk about that. The defense being able to rise up. Is it a sign that they could actually play well throughout the rest of the season? And what has to change about this Steelers offense moving forward? I'm Chris Carter, the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things of the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button in the video if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Just pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks prediction, that you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. All right. All that being said, Steelers fans, boy, if you stayed up for that one, did you live through it? But I want to address something off the top riff here because there's lots of finger pointing. There's lots of blame being thrown around. And you could put it in a lot of different places. I'll get to the play calling in a bit. But if you're saying anything but, Kenny Pickett cost the Steelers this game, I think you're selling yourself short. You're selling yourself a fantasy here. But also, if you're saying that Kenny Pickett can't grow from this, I think you're being very short-sighted. Because it's very possible for Kenny Pickett to be the future for the Steelers and for him to cost them games because he cost them this game. And as much as he also gave them some really good moments, I mean, he was 32 of 44, 257 passing yards, did throw a touchdown, a really good touchdown pass to George Pickens. It kept them alive and was able to bounce back and get them some drives in certain points. But he made too many crucial mistakes, missed too many open wide receivers, and especially the defense got him chance after chance after chance in this game to be able to go out there and win it. The Steelers were down 13-0 at the end of the first quarter. For the next 3 quarters, they allowed a single field goal to an offense that coming into this game, Tua Tagovailoa, even yes, he had been missing for the last 3 games, but he had the highest passer rating of quarterbacks. He had the 5th most deep passing yards of quarterbacks in the NFL, even with him missing half the season. And he had Jalen Waddle, he had Tyreek Hill, they were healthy. And they come out and they smack the defense in the mouth. They showed, hey, this is what we're able to do. But the defense adjusted, and they played well. And after that touchdown pass to George Pickens late in the first half, every Steelers possession in the second half had the opportunity to win this game. Because if they score a touchdown anywhere in the second half, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 drives in the second half. If one of them is a touchdown drive, the Steelers find a way to win this game. And again, it wasn't that there wasn't opportunities there because there were. And I know some people are going to say, well, Matt Canada's. Listen, I'm getting to Matt Canada in a minute here. But there were open guys on a third down where Kenny Pickett threw it into double coverage against Deontay Johnson and it went out of bounds. Chase Claypool was open in the middle part of the field. There were times when George Pickens was one-on-one that he could have gotten a target. Times when Pat Freiermuth was one-on-one, he could have gotten a target. And again, it's okay to criticize Kenny Pickett and say, hey, this game was on the rook. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that he's not going to grow from it. And I think that there's a detachment that Steelers fans are going through here where they're saying, like, where they find it impossible to blame the person that they like the most. And there's a bunch of shame. There's a bunch of blame to be going around. Because, again, I was going to get to Matt Canada. there's two big problems that I have with Matt Canada right now, because everyone's saying, oh, the play calls, there's nobody open. There are. That's not the problem. The problem is that there's too many short plays that are drawn up right now in an offense that's just not going to be consistent, and he has to understand that by now. That at this point you have to be able to draw up some opportunities and take about 8 shots a game, once a drive, sometimes multiple times a drive if you get the opportunity, where you're giving your quarterback a chance at a one-on-one play down the field, schemed up. And if the receiver comes down with it, it's a big play and a chance for a touchdown, because this offense is just not good enough to have multiple methodical drives to get down the field. In the second quarter, Kenny Pickett rebounded from an interception in the first quarter. They had a 12-play, 48-yard field goal drive, and then a 13-play, 86-yard touchdown drive that started at the Miami 7. No, excuse me, starting the Miami 7, the Pittsburgh Steelers 14-yard line. I thought that was phenomenal. That was Kenny Pickett at his best, and I was thinking like, oh, he's figuring some things out there. And there was a penalty that sent them back in that drive. But then for the rest of the game, third quarter, you get the ball back, 3 and out, 1 first down, then you give the ball right back, 3 and out, 1 first down, then you give the ball right back, then another 3 and out. It wasn't until the last 2 drives of the game where both times they got multiple first downs, but then threw an interception when they got down in the red zone. I think that you're asking for a lot for your rookie quarterback in an offense that you do not have an identity in if you're not giving them more shot play opportunities. And that's where my biggest gripe with Matt Canada is. But I also think there's another gripe to be had here. And this might not be as much of a gripe because, again, people on Twitter, Steelers fans, they're always mad at offensive coordinators and play calls because they could have called the better play at any point in time. They're a genius because they can see it from their couch and make this happen. And that's not to say that Steelers fans don't have the right to be angry. But I don't think that the play calls per se are the biggest problem that Matt Canada has right now. I think that the biggest problem is that he is not connecting with Kenny Pickett. And he didn't connect with Mitch Trubisky. And he's not a guy that can get down to the level of these quarterbacks and pull out of them the best version of themselves. And I know that sounds hyperbolic. That sounds like intangible. Like, Chris, I can't see that. I can't study that on a tape. Yeah, I know. That's the whole point of this. But great coaches know how to dig down into guys and pull something out of them. Todd Haley, for all the mechanisms that he drew up and on-field concepts he drew up, he at least dug into Ben Roethlisberger and forced him to be a different player and made a really good Steelers offense. And if it wasn't for Todd Haley, Ben Roethlisberger probably would have had to retire in 2014 or 2015 based on all the shots that he was taking by the time Todd Haley took over the offense. He at least got through to Ben and said, hey, buddy, you got to be better at this. And Ben at least heard him for a time. We all know there was a rift there. But I think that's the biggest problem that Matt Canada is having is that, and it's important to give Kenny Pickett time. But at the same time, I do think there's got to be a level. It's like, hey, man, this is what we need from you in these drives. This is what we need from you. Like expectations, being up with him, having that personal relationship, growing together. Because right now the Steelers, these are growing pains that they're going through with Kenny Pickett. And it's good that they're going through them at all. Because if they lose, because a loss like this with Mitch Trubisky at quarterback, and I'm not saying that they would have lost with Mitch Trubisky, they might have won this game based on the way that Mitch Trubisky played. But if you lose like this with Mitch Trubisky, you don't gain anything from it because he's not your future. You're hoping that Kenny Pickett is your future. And maybe Kenny Pickett isn't. Maybe in 3-4 years we realize, well, that just it didn't pan out. But you at least have to give him the chances to grow this year. And I think this week, this is one of those games where he's going to look at and he's going to stew about it. And he's going to come back and work harder for it. The first interception, Chase Claypool was tripped up. You could say it's pass interference, but I do think he can fight to keep his feet a little bit better there. Either way, I'm not too mad about Kenny Pickett with that one. The second interception, 3rd and 16, you were set behind the sticks because there were 2 really bad mental mistakes by your offense on penalties. And so you felt like you had to force it. The second interception, it was a killer, but I wasn't too mad at that. I'm like, that was a rough spot for the young buck to be in. But the third interception was the killer. Literally, it killed the Steelers' hopes. But also, on a drive where everything's going right, and he could have just rushed for a good gain and gotten out of bounds. He tries to throw to the end zone where Deontay Johnson breaks one way, he throws it the other way, and the defender's right there waiting for it. But all that being said, you can say, hey, Kenny missed a bunch of reads today. Hey, he was not clutch today. The Steelers defense gave him 2 drives to go out there at the end of the game and be a game-winning hero on the drive, and he threw interceptions on both of them. You can say that, but you can also say that, hey, I think that he can grow from this. I think that he can get better and learn from these moments. A lot of people after the game were tweeting about, how Terry Bradshaw had the same amount of interceptions, the same amount of games. Peyton Manning, had a rough start to his career. There's guys like that. And I think that's the reason the Steelers got him, because he's not just a talent. He's a character. He has the character. He has the resilience in his career at Pitt. He had bad days at Pitt, but he found a way to bounce back from them and got better because of it. And I think that's what the Steelers, they want to see in their leader. We'll talk more about that leadership component and what needs to change about this offense in just a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, because there's a lot to talk about. But first, we got to talk to you guys about Prediction Strike. If you don't know what Prediction Strike is the world's first sports stock market. You can now invest in professional athletes just like you do with stocks. It's a lower risk alternative to sports betting, and athlete prices move based on performance and supply and demand. For example, if you had invested in Jalen Hurts, the Eagles quarterback, just a year ago, you'd be up 48.2% in the money that you put down on Jalen Hurts. If you invested in Kyle Pitts, though, at the start of this year, you'd be down 44.12% because he just hasn't been producing. There's tons of options for you to look at on your favorite players to root for or to hate. And you can invest in all the different 4 sports, including NFL, UFC, NBA, and Major League Baseball. Download the Prediction Strike app and use the code LOCKED, LOCKED, for a free share when you sign up and make your first deposit of $20 or more. That's promo code LOCKED, LOCKED, for a special one-time giveaway. And Precision Strike will choose one person who signs up with the promo code LOCKED and makes a deposit to win to have a further chance to win a 100 free random shares that can be worth up to $3,000 if you get lucky and receive Josh Allen shares. Invest in what you know on Precision Strike, the stock market for sports. We're also brought to you by Blue Nile. Whether you're ready to pop the question or you're celebrating a milestone moment, find jewelry as unique as her with the modern convenience of online shopping at BlueNile.com. Blue Nile has online tools that let you choose your diamond size, your diamond shape, the clarity, as well as the setting style. Blue Nile's bench jewelers will then handcraft her perfect engagement ring. Each ring is one of a kind. Looking for fine jewelry but having trouble choosing? Blue Nile has jewelry experts on hand 24/7, available via phone or chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. Make your moment sparkle with jewelry from BlueNile.com, and Locked On Steelers listeners will get $50 off purchases of $500 or more. This podcast exclusive includes engagement rings. So use that promo code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON, Locked On, all one word. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever piece at BlueNile.com today. All that being said, let's get back to this talking about the Steelers offense. Because, we do back-to-back ad reads. We keep it rolling here on this Locked On Steelers podcast. But, I dip back to the Matt Canada conversation here. I think there is criticism to be had about Matt Canada. I'm not saying that there isn't. But the people who want him fired right now, I want you to think about what you're actually talking about here. You're talking about, if you're firing Matt Canada, you are then by de facto, just giving Kenny Pickett his 3rd offensive coordinator in less than 2 years, because he had Mark Whipple for Pitt last year. He's had Matt Canada this year, and then you'll be having whoever for the rest of this year. And then you'll give him a 4th offensive coordinator, because they'll go outside the organization. They won't just take whoever was the interim. So he'll have 4 offensive coordinators in 3 years. That is not how you build up a rookie quarterback. And I know that you're probably sitting there frustrated. You're tired of Matt Canada's certain calls. My biggest gripe with Matt Canada during this game was they were too conservative at times. They needed to take a shot down the field. They needed to say, hey, you know what? Let's get Claypool on a go route. Let's get Claypool on a deep post. Let's try more George Pickens deep passes, play action deep passes. Give them a shot and tell Kenny, look, Kenny, if you get this one-on-one look, chuck it. If it's not one-on-one, check it down. But look for the single coverage and take the shot. Because, again, this offense isn't good enough and consistent enough to dink and dunk you all the way down the field, because dinking and dunking is nice. It's safe. It's fun. But it also requires a lot more good decisions. And as you saw in this game, one bad decision can lead to an interception that flips the other way. And don't worry, I'll get to the defense in a bit. But I think it's more important to talk about this offense and whether or not it can find an identity. Again, I look at Kenny Pickett and his ability to have that moxie, to carry himself. There was the third down scramble where he broke up the middle of the part of the field and kept the Steelers drive alive. He has plenty of awesome moments like that. And that is the Kenny Pickett that you want to see be consistent. But it takes time to get there. And I said this back when the Steelers weren't starting Kenny Pickett. I felt like the biggest thing that they were trying to do with Mitch Trubisky was to establish an identity in this offense, whether it was horizontal passing, vertical passing, running the ball, something positive for him to come into. The problem is that they never could establish that identity, and here we are. But all that being said, I do think that there's hope for Kenny Pickett. I do think that if you change up the offensive coordinator situation now, you're asking a lot from him. For those who are asking about Mike Sullivan, and I had a good conversation with my man Owen from Pittsburgh. If you don't know Owen, go check out his YouTube channel. He does a good job stirring up, just good discussions. There is Pittsburgh Owen. But when people ask about, like, what about other offensive coordinators? And, he asked about Mike Sullivan. And I was like, Mike Sullivan's been an offensive coordinator for about 4 years in the NFL. He was the offensive coordinator for the Buccaneers in 2012 and 2013. And then he was the offensive coordinator for the Giants in 2016 and 2017. And during those years, I'm looking down on YouTube right now because I'm trying to pull this up because I typed this out earlier. There we go. In those 4 years, his offense, in the first year he was with the Buccaneers, they ranked 13th. But after that, they ranked 30th, 26th, and 31st in points. That means either next to last or right above next to last, and then one time 26th. And then in total yards, they ranked 23rd, 21st, 25th, and 21st. Mike Sullivan ain't the answer, y'all. If he was some young genius guru that you were laying in wait, maybe that'd be an answer, because then you're saying he's the future. But Mike Sullivan was brought to be a quality control quarterback coach who was going to help just get the fundamentals down so that your passes are coming out on time, your motion isn't taking too long, your footwork is being more consistent. That's what Mike Sullivan's there for. He's not to be the play caller. He's not to be an emergency play caller. I mean, I guess technically he could be if, Matt Canada got sick or something, but again, I don't see the play calls themselves as all the problem. I would say that the Steelers needed to take more shots downfield. They needed to call up some more shot plays where Kenny Pickett was getting one-on-one, Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, George Pickens, somebody in space, so that if they caught the ball and came down with it, it was either a big gain or a touchdown. Not enough of that was done in this game. But again, there were open guys that Kenny Pickett didn't see. And I want people to understand that when a quarterback doesn't see a guy, it doesn't mean, they suck. It just means, hey, you missed this guy. And this was an open opportunity. And you just gotta have to keep coming back and keep getting sharper. And I think Kenny Pickett will get sharper. But this is the growing pains of a rookie quarterback, y'all. I see people saying what's acceptable and what's unacceptable as far as a team result in certain situations. And I'm like, have y'all been through this before? Do y'all know the rodeo here? And maybe some Steelers fans have. I was a freshman or sophomore in high school. I think I was a freshman. No, I was a sophomore in high school when Ben Roethlisberger was drafted. And that first season, when he came in, the Steelers had an offensive identity. It wasn't like a great one, But they had a good offensive line, a run game with Jerome Bettis, a physical receiver in Hines Ward, and a deep threat in Plaxico Burress. And so Ben Roethlisberger just had to step into that and let a great defense be great. Kenny Pickett's not in a similar situation. I do think that there's a lot of potential for this defense, and we'll get to them in a minute here. But this offense doesn't know who it's going to be yet. And they have plenty of talent. They have lots of, Pat Freiermuth, I think he's a playmaker. Chase Claypool, I think he's a playmaker. Deontay Johnson, I think he's a playmaker. George Pickett's a heck of a playmaker. I think the offensive line needs a lot of work. They got their butts kicked in this one. Nowhere to hide about that one. But it's very important to see chemistry, synergy, trust, players being able to understand who they are in a scheme, what their job is, how it plays off of their teammates, and make smart decisions. Those are the things that I think you need to see from the Steelers moving forward, finding ways to grow, finding ways to learn from their mistakes. And I think that this is one of those growing pains games. This is one of those games that Kenny Pickett's going to look back and say, like, I remember that night. It sucked. But if he grows from it, he gets better, he gets sharper. That's going to be an example of why Mike Tomlin and Kevin Colbert and Omar Khan and all those guys said, like, he's the guy. Because if nothing else, he's going to give you his best effort every single time. Also, shout out to George Pickens because that touchdown catch was ridiculous. He found a way to get his foot down before that handed out bounce. But again, I think the biggest thing if you're talking about the Steelers offense with this one, it's very frustrating. Your defense only allows 16 points. You got several opportunities to take a lead and you didn't. It's pretty bad. But again, growth is the important thing right now. When the Steelers put in Kenny Pickett, this season became about his growth. We all knew, and I said from the jump, the Steelers ain't competing for no Super Bowl this year. I think they can still compete for a playoff spot. Granted, 2-5 is a long way to climb your way up from, and they got the Eagles coming to town. But I can see them finding a way to be competitive in this division because this division isn't great right now. Still, all that being said, we could talk a lot about the offense. We could talk more about the offense if we want. But I want to talk about the defense because the dropped interceptions were a big problem. But the schematics and the concepts, not as much. Not as much. We'll get to that in just a minute here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. But first, we got to talk to you guys about our great sponsors at Prize Picks. Now, if you don't know about Prize Picks is daily fantasy sports made easy. All you got to do to play Prize Picks is pick a favorite sport that you have a fantasy beat on for certain players. Then go to Prize Picks, just pick 2 to 5 of those players, and if you think you have a beat on them in fantasy, all you have to do is choose whether they'll get more or less than a certain stat. And that can go for multiple Prize Picks entries as you want. And you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. You're not competing against others. It's just about guessing right on your money, on your more or less picks. Prize Picks includes NFL and NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL, college sports, and so much more. Download the Prize Picks app today or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON, Locked On. If you deposit $100 again, you get $100 back. So don't forget that promo code Locked On, LOCKEDON, at sign up for an additional deposit match of $100. Right there on Prize Picks. We're back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. I took my tie off because it's late. I'm literally recording this like 3:30 in the morning. That's how much I love y'all, because I'm trying to give y'all, make sure y'all have y'all show on time, because I know some of y'all got to do that early morning commute, and it's even worse when the Steelers lose, because then you driving to work like, why do I got to go to work after the Steelers lose? This is the dumbest thing in the world. And then my friend Bob is going to be talking smack because the Ravens won. He's a Ravens fan and all that other stuff. Listen, I get it. That's what I'm trying to help y'all out. So, all that being said, I said I was going to talk some defense. So let's talk some defense. But again, I think the defense did their job in this game. I know they dropped 4 interceptions. I know that those were painful to watch. You're just like, oh, come on. Just catch the ball. I get it. But they just limited a Mike McDaniel's offense that everyone says he's the offensive genius in all the world with Tua Tagovailoa back, who had the 5th most deep passing yards in the NFL and had the highest pass rating in the NFL, and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Raheem Mostert and all these fast people that were supposed to be driving cars, lightning cars, speed cars, all the things that they're supposed to be super fast and unstoppable. And they scored 16 points, while the Steelers offense did it next to nothing. That's pretty good defense. And that first touchdown was given up on a first drive where they came out, and you know what? Hey, they caught them off guard with some of the spacing and the way they did things. But did you see the adjustments? Did you see the communication? Devin Bush was out there covering, passing it off to Terrell Edmonds. Terrell Edmonds was covering, passing it off to Levi Wallace, who was passing it off to Cam Sutton and Minkah Fitzpatrick and Miles Jack, and they were working together. And the defense wasn't perfect. Again, they dropped 4 interceptions. They still allowed over 4 yards per carry on the ground. They, if we're being real, they never sacked Tua Tagovailoa. That sucks. But if you're gonna tell me that you come into a game where this explosive offense that was ripping teams' head off, that ripped off the head of the Ravens, that ripped off the head of the Bills, and you held them to 16 points, that's a win. Especially when the offense, I mean, again, the offense didn't give you any favors. In today's NFL, with the talent that the Dolphins had, the Steelers defense kicked their butts. The problem was that the Dolphins defense kicked the Steelers offense butts a little bit better. I won't say a lot better, a little bit better, because they only won by 6 points and it was just 2 field goals. I say all this to say that because you look across the board, I think guys played very well. I think Miles Jack, another really good game from him, 10 tackles in this game. He was all over the field. Devin Bush, I thought was really good. 6 tackles, 1 a tackle for loss, had a really good breakup while covering Tyreek Hill. Minkah Fitzpatrick, 6 tackles and a breakup. Cam Heyward, 5 tackles and a tackle for loss. Terrell Edmonds, 5 tackles, 2 pass breakups, 1 more. Just like, come on, Terrell, just catch it, man. There was one it came at him. He was like, I don't want it. Get out of here. Ball, catching ball. That's not what we do on defense. And I say that in jest. Terrell Edmonds is a very good player. I hope that people understand when I make jokes, it is not to say these guys. I'm talking bad about these guys, unless I am talking bad about a guy. And I will let you know if that's the case. But Terrell Evans is a lot better of a safety. I've said that for years. If you follow me on Twitter, on Carter Critiques, if you follow my writing, my film study, and this show, you know that I'm very pro Terrell Edmonds being part of this team in long term. I think he's a very good safety who pairs well with Minkah Fitzpatrick. He's just not a turnover guy. I thought, James Pierre hung in there when he had to hang in there. I thought Larry Ogunjobi played well. He was changing the line of scrimmage. I think he's really come along. I think that he's starting to figure out how to play next to Cam Heyward, and they're figuring out how to stop the run, create changes, and let the guys behind them make plays. There's something there. This defense is building something. And again, when you look at how this game worked as possession wise, in the first quarter, the Steelers were down 13-0. They allowed 3 points after that. And that's after the offense in the second half, after getting 10 points in the second quarter to make this a 3-point game. The offense had 2 3-and-outs, 1 first down on a drive. In the entire third quarter, they had 3 drives and 1 first down. 3 punts. The next 2 drives, 1 first down between them. And that also included a 3-and-out. You had 5 straight punts, and the Steelers defense did not budge. Then they threw an interception. And I'm not mad at Kenny Pickett about the second interception because it was 3rd and 16. Those were procedural penalties that the offense needs to clean up, and the guys who committed those guys need to be held responsible for that. And Kenny Pickett got desperate, and the Dolphins took advantage of it. I ain't too mad about Kenny about that one. And when he threw that interception, I was like, at first I was like, oh, this is over. I was like, wait a second, this defense has been playing well. Maybe they can get the stop. And then they go get the stop. And then they gave the Steelers a chance with 2 minutes on the clock to go drive down the field and win the game. They said, that's all right, Kenny Pickett. We're going to give you another shot. If you're a bad defense or even mediocre defense, you don't do that. And what's the difference here? When people were talking about this defense and how bad they were and this, that, and the third earlier in the year, again, they're playing this way. Why? Because they're not on the field every single play. Because the Steelers won the time of possession 33 minutes and 16 seconds to 26 minutes and 44 seconds for the Dolphins. The defense wasn't tired at the end of this game. They were fighting. They had stuff to fight with. I think that means something. And part of that part is what Kenny Pickett does bring you. And Mitch Trubisky wasn't bringing you. And again, I'm not saying that the defense was perfect. Again, you got to catch those interceptions. They could have been better against the run. They could have gotten down to a tongue below. They needed to create turnovers. For this defense to be what it's supposed to be, they have to create turnovers. Granted, they are missing their biggest and best player. And when TJ Watt's on the field, we see it's not just him who creates, it's what creates around him. Because when he's out there, he's forcing so much crazy stuff to happen that other guys feed off of it. You see Alex Highsmith play better. You see Cam Heyward play better. You see Minkah Fitzpatrick get more opportunities to make interceptions. You see guys feed off that energy and that success, and that's not there. But this defense still has the makings to be the strongest part of the team and to be a good defense in the NFL. Granted, they're going to have their hands full next week with the Eagles, and I like that offense, and that's going to be a tough one. But you saw this team and how talented they were, and they were able to handle them. Keep this game range. Anytime you give up 16 points as a defense, you won that game. You did what you were supposed to. And I know the Steelers will say, well, we didn't do what we were supposed to because we didn't win. Defense holding that offense with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Tua Tagovailoa, and that offense to 16 points, your offense needs to pick you up at that point. And it makes me, look at this a little bit harder and say, all right, what do the Steelers do going from here? Are they going to be able to rebound? Because right now they're 2-5. They're most likely going to be 2-6 next week. Though I will say it would be the most Tomlin win ever to beat the Eagles in their own stadium. Be the last team to beat the last unbeaten team in the NFL. Go into the bye week, and then they're 3-5, and we're all sitting here saying, "Whoa, is there a chance? I don't know." But let's paint them 2-6 going into the bye week. They get back T.J. Watt. They get back DeMonte KZ. Maybe they get back Calvin Austin. Everyone gets a little bit healthier. Maybe they're able to put some wins together. Maybe this defense can actually create some more turnovers again and not miss those opportunities. I think this unit can still carry this team. But again, it goes back to what I said about the offense with Matt Canada and with Kenny Pickett. I think Kenny has to grow. I'm not going to come at Kenny for trying to be aggressive at different times. I don't think that, I think you can criticize and say, hey, you know what? He cost you the game, and he did cost them this game. But rookie quarterbacks cost you games. That's just what it is. They got to grow. They got to learn. Peyton Manning, Terry Bradshaw, even Ben Roethlisberger. Well, I guess his rookie year, it didn't happen to the playoffs. But Ben Roethlisberger is a young quarterback, cost them plenty of games. But the thing is, what you learn from these games and what they learn from these opportunities is how to bounce back from those moments. And I think in this game, you saw a really good bounce back. Kenny Pickett threw that deep ball where Chase Claypool got tripped up and fell down. It was intercepted. And at that point, the Steelers had a 3-and-out and then a two plays and then with an interception. It was a disaster. And they had every reason to panic. The Dolphins are up 13-0. The defense looked like they were in trouble. Kenny Pickett leads a 12-play, 48-yard drive, gets a field goal. Calms things down. Steelers force a punt. 13-play, 86-yard drive, touchdown. Bang. They're down 3. Well, it was tied. No, they were down 3, and then they were down 6 because at the end of the half, they did get a field goal. All that being said, the defense wasn't the problem there. And I think there were some great coaching adjustments that happened to make it that way. Devin Bush, again, guys were bracketing, guys were passing guys off in the zone covers. They knew that, hey, we can't run with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle one-on-one all day. We're going to tire ourselves out. We're going to put ourselves in bad positions. We have to work together. We have to piece guys off to each other, or pass guys off to each other, piece them up, make sure, hey, you know what? If Tua Tagovailoa is going to fit it here, he's going to have to fit it between 2 guys. And that takes timing, that takes practice, it takes study, and it takes execution. And I think they did the execute part there on the defense. But the offense, again, need more execution there. Also, need more play calls that don't require as much consistent execution with an offense that's, again, still learning who they are and very young. A lot of different angles to take here. Hang in there, Steelers fans. If Bob, the Ravens fan at your job, is giving you a hard time, or Tom, as our guy Pittsburgh Dad says, go check out his YouTube channel. He's hilarious if you haven't. I've always loved his show for years. But I know it's rough. I know you sitting there singing like, oh my gosh, this is bad. But I think it's games like this that Kenny Pickett picks himself up from and gets better from. And I think the team rallies around that. And I think that you'll remember, some of the games when he had the chance to win the game and he didn't. How did he respond to that? That could be what would be part of defining his legacy as he works his way into the NFL. Like I said, hang in there, Steelers fans. A lot more coming your way. I'll have my grades up on for the Tuesday episode. We're going to try to get it out a little early on Monday night. Got some things going on that'll kind of boost up my schedule a little bit. Things are packed a little tight here this week. But we'll try to get that grades episode out to you a little early so that you can get your Tuesday grades on Monday night. But we're going to have a lot of things out to you this week. If you're a Pittsburgh fan who's just hurting all over because you're also a Pitt fan, I have a film study on Keaton Slovis and why he's sticking up the joint for the Panthers and what he needs to be doing better on the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, so post-gazette.com. That should be up in the morning, Monday morning. You can check that out there. But it's going to be a busy time. But again, I think these are growth. It's a time for growth. This isn't a time for just sulking and just being like, woe is me. This is a wrap. And don't give up on Kenny Pickett. Because these type of moments where I think you start to see how quarterbacks respond. How do they respond when everything's going wrong? Do they stick to their guns? Do they stick to their confidence? Do they say, hey, we're going to pull this out? Sometimes that's the moxie that carries you forward and then becomes who you are when things do start to click for you. But again, we'll talk more about that and the Steelers grades tomorrow on the Tuesday episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Thanks again for checking us out. You can find this show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you saw this video on YouTube, hit the like button in the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. Thank you for making the Locked On Steelers podcast your first listen every day. Again, I'm Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Be back on your screens in your ears very soon with our grades episode coming up Monday night and for the Tuesday.